Ekanem was sitting at the table, eating with his girlfriend Oma. He was completely occupied with his phone, laughing and giggling as messages kept coming. He was unaware that his girlfriend Oma was sitting across from him at the table. Oma said, "You are the busiest man I have ever known." And Ekanem responded, "The bills are paid, right?" He went right back to reading his messages and laughing. Oma got upset and said, "You don't have time for me anymore. You're gone all day, and when you're home, you're on your phone." Ekanem got up from his chair, smiled, walked towards Oma, leaned in and gave her countless kisses to make her feel happy. "I would like to take a break from this relationship," Ekanem said to Oma. Oma turned and looked him dead in the eyes and said, "That's fine, but don't expect me to be here when you return from your break." Ekanem was very surprised because he was expecting her to beg him to stay. He grabbed his suit and left the house. Later that evening, when Ekanem came home from work, as he opened the front door and walked in, his wife Emem rushed towards him because she had not seen him in 3 days. "I called you for days, but you did not pick up your calls," Emem said. But Ekanem responded, "I am here now." He was rude and very disrespectful in his response. She did not mind his rudeness. She had prepared dinner, hoping he would come back home. So she rushed off to warm the dinner and also prepared a bath for him. She was very excited that he was home and refused to focus on his bad behavior. Emem was all over her husband, trying to make him feel comfortable, but Ekanem felt irritated by his wife, so he pushed her away multiple times. A few minutes later, Emem called her friend Uche to tell her that her husband was home safe. Uche was so upset that Ekanem disappeared without any call or any information, but Emem told her not to worry. When Uche hung up the phone, Emem went to take her husband's clothes to the laundry while he was taking a shower. She found some condom in his pocket, which made her feel sad and worried, but she immediately picked herself up and left the room. She served her husband dinner like nothing had happened and kissed him goodnight. The next day, Ekanem drove to his side chick's house, Oma, to pick her up on a date. Oma looked so good and very sexy, and Ekanem was so happy to see her. They drove out to the club together, danced all night, and they could not keep their hands off each other. Uche, Emem's friend, spotted them together. She was surprised to see her friend's husband in the arms of another woman, so she quickly made a video of them. Meanwhile, at home, Emem was preparing a delicious meal for her husband Ekanem, and she called him repeatedly, but he told her he was still at work. Uche called Emem and asked her about her husband. Emem responded that Ekanem was not back from work. Uche was quiet. Then she sent a video to Emem. When Emem watched the video, she was in total disbelief about what she just saw. She panicked and tried to call Ekanem's phone, but the phone was switched off. Emem sobbed intensely. She was so heartbroken and emotional that she tried to call her husband multiple times, but he did not pick up her calls. She was so sad, she cried herself to sleep. In the wee hours of the morning, a phone call came in, and it was the hospital. Her husband was involved in a car accident due to drunk driving. Emem rushed barefoot to the hospital to see her husband. He was laying there unconscious. She sat on the bed beside him in panic. She cried and prayed for her husband. After a few hours, Ekanem moved his legs while calling for his side chick Oma. When he called Oma's name 3 times, Emem asked him, "Who is Oma?" "I am Emem, your wife." Ekanem opened his eyes and stared at his wife for a few seconds. Emem was so confused and worried, so she tried to calm Ekanem down again. Her husband felt irritated by her, so he grabbed her hands and flung them away, saying, "I'm in pain. I don't want to be bothered." Later that evening, the doctor discharged Ekanem. Emem took her husband home to care for him. She managed to help him into the bed. He did not want his wife around him at all. He ordered her to bring his phone so he could make calls. When Emem left the room, Ekanem called Oma, his side chick, to check on her, but Oma did not pick his calls. The following morning, Ekanem panicked as he had not heard from Oma since the accident. So he got up and drove to Oma's house to check on her as she was not answering his calls. Omar refused to open the door because Ekanem had abandoned her at the hospital. His children rushed to the door to open for him. He was happy to see his children and his side chick Omar, but Omar did not want to see Ekanem. "You abandoned me at the hospital," Omar yelled at Ekanem. "We have been together for 6 years and have 2 children together, but you refuse to commit to this relationship. You're married to another woman who has no child for you." Omar was very angry, so she gave Ekanem an ultimatum of 1 month to divorce his wife. She threatened to take his children out of the country and deny him access to them. Ekanem loved his children. He did not want to lose them. So he drove home in a rush to figure things out for himself. He could not afford to lose his children. He went to his bedroom to think of ways to break the news to his wife. His wife, Emem, came to check on him. She was so gentle, loving and sweet. The more she tried to be positive and good, the more angry Ekanem was. In the heat of the argument, he snapped and told Emem that he wanted a divorce. Emem froze in her steps and her head spun. Emem stood in shock, not knowing what to do. Ekanem spoke arrogantly that he was filing for a divorce and she should be ready to sign the papers. Emem was too shocked to cry. A million thoughts ran through her mind. What will her family say? His family, their friends, the church. She had no job. How would she cope? Where would she go? She did not know where to start. She collapsed and fell to the ground. Ekanem picked her up and poured some water on her mercilessly. After a while, she came back to her misery. When she regained consciousness, she began to beg her husband for another chance, but he yelled at her and started calling her barren. Ekanem walked towards the closet, packed his wife's clothes, and rolled the luggage out to the patio. He opened the door and ordered Emem to leave. Emem had no money, so she grabbed her husband and tried to make him change his mind. Ekanem refused. Emem called her friend Uche. On hearing the news, Uche rushed down there to pick Emem up and drove her home. Emem sobbed uncontrollably and cried her heart out. She refused to be consoled. She had wasted 9 years of her life on a man. No love, no support, and no children. Ekanem had been a cheating husband just 2 years into their marriage. Her friend Uche advised her to cut her losses, but she insisted on restoring her marriage. She rushed to the church, lay there praying and crying for hours. She refused to leave the church. A few days later, she went to Ekanem's house to see if she could make him change his mind. She met the lawyer and Ekanem working on the divorce papers. She tried to make Ekanem change his mind, but Ekanem was adamant on his decision. Emem went back to Uche's house. She cried and prayed day in and day out for her marriage. Ekanem called his side chick Omar. Right after signing the divorce papers, Omar was very happy. It was the best news she has heard in a while. Ekanem packed a few clothes and went to stay with his side chick Omar and their children. While he was gone, Emem came to the house to talk to Ekanem. She wanted to beg him into changing his mind about the divorce, but he was not home. Emem decided to stay in Ekanem's house for 2 weeks, waiting for him. He came back to see her. He laughed so hard at her and wondered what she was doing there after the divorce. "We're no longer married, in case you forgot," said Ekanem. Emem walked over to him to welcome him, but he yelled at her and pushed her away. He told her he was in love with another woman and they had children together. Emem felt like something had hit her in the head. The news broke her, and she felt betrayed by her husband Ekanem. She broke down in tears, wailing and crying, wishing it was a dream. She cried herself to sleep on the floor. And the next morning, she woke up to a knock on the door. It was Omar and her 2 children. Omar had all their luggage and they were moving into the house. Emem opened the door and Omar introduced herself and the children to Emem and informed her of their plan to move in. Ekanem had married Omar barely a few days after signing his divorce papers. Emem slumped to the ground and sat. She did not believe it when Ekanem said she had 2 kids. She finally saw them. She was devastated at the betrayal she had faced for over 7 years. She couldn't believe her husband had another family outside their home. When Ekanem came home in the morning, Emem confronted him about Oma. Oma had moved into Ekanem's bedroom. Emem was left in the guest room. The following morning, as Emem was cooking in the kitchen, Oma walked in and pushed Emem out of the kitchen. Emem quietly left as she did not want to lose her cool. She grabbed her bag and went out to go cool off. But when she returned, the locks were changed and she lost access to the house. She called Ekanem to inform him that she was locked out of the house, but Ekanem told her he was out of town on a business trip and told her to wait till he got back. Emem went to stay with Uche for a few days until Ekanem came back. She cried for days on end. She had sleepless nights and prayed day and night so God could restore her marriage. She lost interest in everything. A few days later, Ekanem came back home and Emem went to the house to see him. But when she got there, she was denied entry by both Ekanem and his new wife. She went back to Uche's house to stay with her. The following months were hell for Emem. She had lost everything. She had no interest in doing anything else. She cried and grieved her marriage for months. After a couple months, Emem went to Ekanem's house to take the rest of her things. This time, she was different. She was direct, firm, and very confident. She barely spoke a few words to Ekanem. She collected all her things and loaded them up in Uche's car. Ekanem was surprised and confused that Emem was no longer interested in begging him anymore. He tried to have a few conversations with Emem, but she was not interested. She excused herself and drove off with Uche. Uche took her to many fun places and kept her busy so she could forget all about Ekanem. Uche was able to get her a job in her workplace. Emem had not worked since she got married, so she was very happy to have her new job. One morning, as they stepped out to go to work, Uche's car refused to start and they were running late. A man drove into the parking lot. He saw them struggling to start the car, so he approached and offered to drop them off at work. On his way to drop them off, he called his mechanic to go pick up the car and get it fixed. Emem was so grateful. The man, Ukeme, dropped them off at work and offered to pick them up after work, but Emem declined. She came home from work to meet Ukeme outside her apartment, waiting for her. Ukeme informed her that her car would be ready the following day, and he also offered to drop her off at work the next day, but Emem smiled and declined. A few weeks later, Ukeme came by Uche's apartment and rang the doorbell. Emem answered the door. Ukeme asked her about her car and then asked her out on a date. She hesitated, but Ukeme was persistent, so she agreed. Emem and Ukeme went out on a date, and it was the best time she has had in years. Ukeme was very funny. He made her laugh and smile the whole time. Emem was so happy and grateful. When she got home after the date, she told Uche all about the date. Emem and Ukeme kept seeing each other a few more times. Ukeme often told Emem how charming, calm, gentle, and sweet she was. She would laugh and giggle a lot, and she also made Ukeme laugh so much. Every time they met, they would talk for hours. They enjoyed each other's company. At Ekanem's house, life was different. Oma's maid quit her job, so there was no food, the house was dirty, and Oma was constantly asking for money. She was lazy and very expensive. She consistently asked Ekanem about his will and his businesses. She kept pushing for her and her children's name to be the next of kin. Ekanem thought that was strange, but did not pay much attention. His life was not going the way he thought it would. When he came home from work, he had to cook, clean, and take care of the children, while Oma stayed at home doing nothing all day. Ekanem started complaining, but Oma would shout down at him, "I am not Emem who tolerated all your nonsense. She gave you everything, yet you treated her like trash." Oma yelled at Ekanem, "Do not jumpstart my madness today. I am not Emem." Ekanem quietly walked away because he knew Oma had no tolerance. Meanwhile, at Uche's house, Emem was so happy with her new life. She invited Ukeme home to meet her friend Uche. They ate and talked for hours until Ukeme left. Things were moving so well and beautifully for Emem and Ukeme. He took her to all her favorite places. They had so many fun dates together and life was beautiful. Emem was getting her life back and things were returning to normal for her. Emem was very caring and loving to Ukeme. She cooked for him and showed him so much love, care, and kindness, but she refused to sleep with him or let him kiss her. She had been scarred a lot, so this time she was taking her time. One day, as Ukeme, Emem, and Uche were at a restaurant eating and enjoying their time, a Kanem walked in. He saw Emem and walked towards her to talk down to her like he always did. He accused her of running into the arms of another man barely a few months after their marriage. Uche had had enough of Ekanem. She stood up to challenge Ekanem. She accused him of not being able to father a child after 9 years of marriage. Ekanem laughed and told Uche he had 2 children, but Uche mocked him and said to him, "Do yourself a favor and get a DNA test." Ekanem frowned and was shocked at the accusation that he was not man enough to father a child. He froze and quietly walked out of the restaurant. As he got home, Oma asked him about the will again, but he snapped and yelled at her to back off. Oma was too interested in Ekanem's will, so much so that Uche's DNA accusation began to make sense in Ekanem's mind. He went to the doctor the following day to get tested, only to find out that he couldn't father a child due to an infection that made him sterile. He was so surprised that he asked the doctor where the babies in his house came from. The doctor had no idea what he was talking about and advised him to get a DNA test. Ekanem crumbled into the chair and could not move. The doctor called his driver to take Ekanem home. The next day, Ekanem told Oma he was taking the children to get ice cream and he took them to the doctor for a DNA testing. A few days later, it was confirmed that the children's DNA did not match his. To make matters worse, it was confirmed that both children came from different men. When he got home, he packed all of Oma and the children's belongings and threw them outside. Ekanem was furious. He could not believe what his beloved side chick did to him. Oma was confused, so she began to argue. Ekanem became even more furious and he threw the test result at Oma. When Oma saw the result, she fell on her knees and begged Ekanem. In her defense, she said, "Yes, the children are not yours. I knew you couldn't father children because we had been together for 2 years and you could not get me pregnant. So I had to help you and get other men to get me pregnant." "To help me?" Ekanem yelled. At this point, he lost it and landed a harsh slap across Oma's face. Ekanem wept inconsolably. The pain of betrayal was just too much. He trusted Oma wholeheartedly and could never imagine that she could do this to him. He grabbed her things and threw them out and locked Oma out of the house. Oma sat by the door crying and begging for forgiveness, but Ekanem was silent. After a few hours with no success, Oma packed her things and left. Ekanem got in his car and drove down to Uche's house to beg Emem. He had lost his wife through his fault. The childlessness they had was all on him, but he had treated Emem with such disdain. When he got there, he rang the doorbell and someone opened the door. Ekanem saw Ukeme on one knee, about to propose to Emem, while her friends were there to celebrate with her. Ekanem screamed and interrupted the proposal. He had lost his mind. He rushed in between them and punched Ukeme in the face. A fight erupted between both men. The girls pulled them apart. Ekanem refused to leave. He begged and accepted all the insults that were hurled against him. He had lost so much and had nothing else to lose. He was willing to end it there. Emem was so stunned because she had never seen Ekanem that hopeless. So she agreed to go with him to his house to calm him down. Ukeme was in tears. He begged Emem not to go, but she insisted on going because she was afraid of what Ekanem might do to himself. She took Ekanem home. She bathed him, cleaned up the house, and made him dinner. Ukeme was so hurt and felt abandoned. He felt like Emem chose Ekanem all over again. Ekanem apologized to Emem and asked her for forgiveness. Emem told him that she forgave him. Later that day, Emem returned to Uche's house. They did not hear her coming. Ukeme and Uche were childhood best friends, and Uche had convinced Ukeme to date Emem and help her heal from her pain. Emem overheard the conversation that Uche had set her up with Ukeme without her permission. Emem was so surprised. She walked into the house quietly. She felt played and disappointed at her friend Uche. Uche and Ukeme tried to convince her that they did not mean to hurt her. She quietly turned around and left the house. Emem was tired of defending herself and fighting for her relationship and friendship. She was done, so she did not say a word to Uche and Ukeme. She stayed in a hotel for the weekend. Ukeme and Uche called her for days, but Emem refused to pick up their calls. After a few days, when she was done feeling upset, she went back home to Uche and reconciled with her. Ekanem called Emem and asked her to come to the house. She dressed up nicely and went to the house to meet Ekanem. On arriving there, Ekanem had cooked and decorated the entrance to the dining with rose petals and candles. Emem walked to the dining. In her heart, she wished Ekanem had done this when they were married. I wish he was kind and caring in our marriage, Emem said to herself. She sat down cautiously, and Ekanem came behind her and knelt down. Emem turned around and saw him with a ring box. Ekanem proposed again to marry Emem. He said, "Remember how you wanted the marriage? I am willing to give you another chance. I don't want all the years you had invested to go to waste. Let's try again." Emem stared at him in absolute shock. He had not changed at all. "You have not changed. You are still mean and wicked," Emem said. "You think you're doing me a favor by marrying me? No. Being married to you was torture, and divorcing you was a blessing to my life." Emem raised her voice at Ekanem. Ekanem had never taken responsibility for anything he did. Emem gave Ekanem a very stern look, got up, grabbed her bag, and walked right out of the house. When she got to the door, she turned around and said goodbye to Ekanem and told him never to call or come near her again. Ekanem rushed to the door to stop her, but she was already out the door. Emem drove straight to Ukeme's house. When she got there, Ukeme was sitting outside. He was so devastated and did not know if Emem would ever come back to him. As Emem opened the gate, she saw him outside and ran to him. He was so happy to see her. She jumped into his arms and gave him a kiss. She told him, "Yes, I will marry you." Ukeme was so happy to hear that. He carried her into the house to celebrate their engagement. They both called Uche to tell her about the good news. The moral lesson of this is to never take people's kindness for granted. Secondly, love and cherish your spouse as yourself. What you wouldn't do to yourself, don't do it to your spouse. There will always be distractions. Have the discipline to say no to distractions. Cherish and focus on your spouse's strength. Don't dwell on the other things that they don't have. What do you think of each character? And what would you have done if you were in Emem's shoes? Please leave your response in the comment below. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.